The news gets worse for the Philadelphia 76ers. Jared McCain was expected to be out during the regular season, and we have more updates on when his availability may be or may not be. We'll talk about that right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On 76ers. We're your hosts, Keith Pompey and Kayla Santiago. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us wherever you listen to podcasts, you can also check us out with the free daily newsletter on lockedondaily.com to read all things about the Philadelphia 76ers and so much more. So make sure to go check us out on free daily newsletter. That's on lockedondaily.com. So we're going to give you Jared McCain updates and the latest on his injury status, overall injuries of what's going to happen in this preview coming up, and the 76ers continue to have players out, and then a preview of the game that's not going to see a lot of faces, the Pelicans and the Philadelphia 76ers. So first things first, let's start out with the bad news for Philadelphia. Keith, we knew Jared McCain was not going to come back during the regular season. That was expected, but he is officially ruled out until the remainder of the season. This is a blow for Philadelphia. They hope to maybe get him back towards a postseason run if possible, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case after what was just revealed.
Yeah, it's not happening. They're going to shut him down. You know what? I mean, this is a blow, but at the same time, it's not surprising.
Right.
Actually, it was actually expected. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I remember the first time that Nick Nurse was talking, after we found out that Jared McCain, was injured. It was one of those things where the coach said, hey, we got to worry about his long-term future. This is a guy that's going to be in the league, we hope, for a long time. And the more you think about it is, we talk about playoffs. This isn't a team that looks like it's going to win a championship. And then secondly, it's kind of sort of like, you want him to come back for the playoffs, and it's like it's going to be a crazy ramp up. He's going to be still trying to get in shape, regardless of how many times he practices or games. Is he really going to be up to it, at 100% in order to do the playoffs? So to me, it's a blow just because of how vital he was to this team and how much he would help them. But to me, I'm not surprised at all that they're just going to shut it down.
I think it's a good idea. As much as I want to see Jared McCain back in a 76ers uniform this season, you're right. I mean, we talked about Jared McCain coming into this year thinking that he was more of a long-term player than an immediate factor, and he kind of showed us that he could be an immediate factor and he could be a serious player for this team and a really available scoring option. Well, that doesn't happen if he comes back too early and doesn't fully heal. We've seen that happen with other Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, we're seeing it currently. He put up some really good numbers in his rookie season, averaged about 15.5 points, 2.6 assists, 2.4 rebounds. The last Sixers rookie shooting guard to average above those numbers was Allen Iverson in 96 and 97. So when you look at, Jared McCain was on his way to climb up that Rookie of the Year award ladder. He was ranked on top. Now, a lot of things can happen throughout the season, and those numbers might have gone down depending on, the production of how he was able to do with Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey on the floor. But I think when you're the 76ers, not only does this season, I don't want to say it looks like a wash, but it kind of does, and a wash in the standpoint of your goal was to get to a championship, and it doesn't look like it's happening this year for this team. So you definitely don't want to bring and force Jared McCain back when this team can't even string together some wins right now. So I think it's a good move by the Philadelphia 76ers. But Keith, we alluded to it as well. This team, especially in the depth area, they don't have the guards that can really control the rock that we want to see throughout the season. Not saying that McCain was a true point guard, but he could move the ball around. He could run off the ball as well. And now you're really missing that piece, especially off the bench.
Yeah, you missed that piece. Not only that, we think about the 30-point games that he had and, everything else. It's crazy. It's kind of like he was given an opportunity like Tyrese Maxey was his rookie year, due to injuries, but Tyrese in his instance, it was because guys were getting COVID left and right, and he produced. And, McCain, at the time he was leading all rookies in scoring, but he was averaging 15.3 3 points while making 2 3-pointers, like you said. He was shooting 38.2% from deep. And, he was the Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month for October and November. So, you know, and the crazy thing is no one expected him to be able to run an offense the way that he did.
Right.
And when he did that, the thing was, okay, we have someone and we can move Tyrese Maxey off the ball, enable Tyrese Maxey to do other things, right? And
Hmm.
everything was supposed to be so great. When Embiid came back, you would have the big three: Embiid, Paul George, Maxey, and then you have the young guy who can also stretch the floor, talking about Jared McCain. And yes, he's going to be someone that they're really going to miss because outside, I hate to say it, Kyle Lowry is their best floor general. Now, Kyle Lowry is 38 years old.
Yeah. Right.
His shot is, yeah, his shot isn't the way it used to be. But at the same time, you still have to say, as far as being a floor general, he's the best one. But you would prefer to play Jared McCain because he's much younger. He can still do things. But, it's going to be a huge loss for the 76ers. But let's face it, he wasn't going to come back, if he did come back, until several months. So, it wasn't like he was going to do much for him when he came back, because it would have to be a readjustment phase and the whole nine.
Right. You don't expect them to come back, after being injured and after having that and saying, okay, we'll just hop into a lineup that's going to go into playoffs and figure it out. I mean, that's going to throw off the chemistry of the whole team. This team hasn't even figured out chemistry just yet, once again, throughout the season. And, we're right now in January. So I think it's a good move by the Philadelphia 76ers. Once again, he was a really fun player to watch. I think he really bloomed earlier than expected, at least for me. I said, I think the 76ers should have gotten Dalton Connect. He was more of a win now player. Jared McCain is a player for the future. Well, he definitely proved me wrong, and I'm excited to see him continue to do that. But they're going to wait till next season because there's no reason to bring him back, to rush him back. He's a rookie right now. And yes, he makes a big impact on this team and a bigger impact than most would have thought in the beginning of the season. He is that floor general. Kyle Lowry has the experience, right? But Jared McCain has the legs. He has the youth. He has the adaptability. He's able to score. He's able to do a lot of different things. And you can play him a lot more minutes right now than you can play Kyle Lowry in his career. That's not what's going to happen for the Philadelphia 76ers, clearly. I mean, Keith, where do they go from here? Because this is something in a conversation we've had so much where do they look at the guard position? Who can really lead this team from point guard? Do you think they're more eager now to go out there and look for a piece? And there's not a lot of pieces that are out there that you're going to get a lot in return for. The 76ers don't have a lot to give, we should say. So that kind of makes it a little bit hard, but maybe they now try to go after a minor piece to try to at least get somebody that can also handle the ball.
I mean, they could, but bigger than that. I mean, we can talk about that later. I mean,
Yeah.
what I want to try saying about is, like, somebody could argue that the 76ers are cursed, because when you think about this, look at Joel Embiid, his rookie year. He missed that year. He missed the second year. Nerlens Noel, he missed his first year. Okay, Markel Fultz, he had all of a sudden he couldn't shoot the ball anymore, and then he just vanished. Ben Simmons, it was a wash. So we look at all this stuff. Oh, Jaleel Okafor, he messed up his knee. So when you look at it, you say to yourself, you're like, wow, all these guys are coming here with these high expectations, and then they just keep struggling, or they get injured. So to me, that's like big. But as far as like looking for someone, I mean, they're going to have to go out there and see what they can get. Maybe somebody from the buyout market, but the problem is you already have like Kyle Lowry, you already have Reggie Jackson, you have
Yeah.
Tyrese Maxey, you have Jeff Doughton, but you do have to think. It depends on how good you think this team is going to be. You do have to go and do your due diligence and see what's out there. You do.
They definitely do. You can't forget about Zaire Smith as well. He had that whole peanut allergy thing happen at the facility
Yeah,
as well.
that's
That was
what I'm
actually a
saying.
really scary time, though. But you look back and you're like, okay, what is going on with this
Yeah.
organization, with this team? They get him, and then all of a sudden, the poor guy has an allergy and, has to go to the hospital and everything like that. So, what's going on with rookies and in this juju of the Philadelphia 76ers? Because it's a little scary right now about how it's a constant theme of rookies getting injured. Maybe it's just a big coincidence, but I do agree with you. There's something there, maybe a little bit of curse for Philadelphia because it's unfortunate, right? It's unfortunate to see these rookies that come up, and now every rookie's not going to pan out. That's just a reality of the situation, but also the way that it's happened for these rookies is very, very strange, and it's continuing to happen here with Jared McCain. But, he's not the only 76ers that is injured. There's a lot more injuries that we're going to have to touch on as we go into this Pelicans game because the list just gets longer and longer and longer, it seems like. And the 76ers team hasn't been whole in a really long time. So we're going to have to touch on that on the other side. And this is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that is a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger whatsoever, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back as well, guaranteed. Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates, only in the iOS mobile app. Make sure you see guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Once again, that is turbotax.com/guarantees. So it's not just Jared McCain for the 76ers. Joel Embiid once again on the injury report. KJ Martin, somebody that both of us had a conversation earlier on in the year saying, stay away from him when you're talking about trading players because you're not going to get much back and he's a really good piece of this team. All of a sudden, he starts to get injured. There's Andre Drummond hasn't been healthy. I mean, Keith, what is going on right now in the organization? Because we talked about maybe a curse for rookies, but this whole team just hasn't been healthy this year, and we haven't been able to really see this group whole in quite some time.
You know what? You're right. I mean, when we look at this, think about this starting lineup, right? The Sixers starting lineup, Caleb Martin, preseason starting lineup, right? Caleb Martin, he had various injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Oubre had various injuries. Tyrese Maxey was out with a hamstring, right? And then who is it? Paul George. He had the hyperextended knee twice. And then Joel Embiid, right? So it just seems like the whole starting lineup. And then in addition to that, KJ Martin, all these other guys, Jared McCain, Andre Drummond. I mean, Eric Gordon had surgery and then had all this. So it's just one thing after another. And we talk about the rookies being cursed. It's like this team is cursed. Now, granted, there have been a lot of injuries around the league, but for a team that was supposed to be built to win a championship and get all this stuff, it's hard when you cannot get any continuity whatsoever. But yeah, it's been a rough season for them because everyone, it's like, oh, Ricky Council the fourth has not been injured.
Yeah, fine, right?
You know what I mean? You have one guy who wasn't injured. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is. And you consistently, we put in the injury reports and things like that. You're just waiting. Okay, who's going to be on it? Because it's not even just Joel Embiid and Paul George, it's these other guys. Now, clearly, they're the main focus. And at the end of the day, they need to play if they can. But you look at these other guys and you say, okay, well, there's really just no consistency there. KJ Martin started to play really well for the 76ers. He was a good role player. He's somebody that they could look to. All of a sudden, he's out. Kayla Martin had some issues as well. He was playing well. Kelly Oubre, too. I mean, you don't want him to go down, and don't let him walk in the streets of Philadelphia, please, because he cannot get hurt. He's some of the energy of this team. What happened last year? I mean, it is crazy right now. And you're right. This is happening throughout the league at this point, and I do understand that. But at the same time, the 76ers are in a bad position because they're having games that are a little bit too close for comfort. They're 15-20 on the year. They need to start winning ball games. That's the biggest difference, at least for me right now. I mean, you look at this team, quote unquote, built to win a championship, and they have an opportunity and a plan, according to Nick Nurse, for Joel Embiid and Paul George. When is that plan going to be put in place? And how about all these other guys that are also on the injury report? Because they're only as good as everybody else on this team. You know, Joel Embiid and Paul George can't play every single minute of every single quarter of every single game, even when they are out there. And it hasn't been a long time. But, you know, we touched on this yesterday, too. Somebody like Tyrese Maxey, who was injured. And this is something that I implored early in the season. If Tyrese Maxey gets the brunt of it, which he's getting right now, he is going to get injured. We saw that earlier in the year. He is getting the brunt of everything right now, trying to do a little bit of everything, trying to be the scorer, the leader, because Paul George and Joel Embiid haven't been in the lineup. And that could be a further cause for a possible injury, too, down the line when your body's fatigued and you're trying to play all these minutes and all these games because your main guys also cannot. I mean, it is a dumpster fire. And I've used that word more times than I would like to count this year for the Philadelphia 76ers. But this is basketball that people don't want to watch. We saw it with the ticket numbers yesterday and the prices of the tickets as well. I mean, these players cannot get out on the floor at the same time and play. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. And one guy we didn't talk about was, Reggie Jackson. He missed the game too. So he is crazy. And the problem is it's been going on with the Sixers for a long time too.
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the guys who came here and then they just get injured. Like, Jared Bayless, he was supposed to be a big, free agent acquisition, and all of a sudden he messed up his wrist, his thumb. So, I mean, it's one of those things where the 76ers cannot get a break, when it comes down. And maybe I shouldn't have said cannot get a break, but but it's one of those things when it comes down to it, they're just extremely injury prone. And like you said, then it leads to a lot of guys playing a lot of minutes, just like Tyrese Maxey. I mean, what was it? He played like 43 minutes one game, and Nick Nurse was like, whoa, maybe we just want to have him play like 40, but not 43. And, to me, I'm looking at it 40 over 82 games, whatever, a long season, that could be rough for the guy. But it's hard for the 76ers. I will say that.
It has been, and they really can't catch a break. And you look at it now, and maybe this plan of Nick Nurse having for Joel Embiid and Paul George will just allow everybody else to rise up and be healthy too, and we'll forget about this as a terrible moment from the past. But you're right, it has been happening throughout seasons. I mean, I remember at times seeing that people need to investigate the medical staff because what was going on there and everything like that. And there's moments that you just see it right now, and it's like, this is absolutely insane what is happening to this team. If their record was different, if this team was winning games and they were going out there and being scrappy and coming out with big wins and at least at 500, I think we're having a much different conversation. We're still like, okay, what's going on? But at the same time, okay, they're waiting for those guys to get healthy. They're not winning games, and they're barely winning games against really bad teams, especially when all their guys aren't out there because they're so shorthanded in so many different areas. So it has been really an injury-prone year for the Philadelphia 76ers, not just the big fella, not just Paul George coming in. It's really everybody else, too. And you don't want those other guys to play too many minutes and get really injury-prone as well, because that just seems the reality right now for this team. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way the 76ers season has gone so far. There's going to be a little bit to preview here versus the Pelicans. We do have some injury updates as well, but this game is another game. We're not going to see the full roster of the Philadelphia 76ers, so we will touch on that in just a moment here and see what you guys can expect as we get ready for this matchup. But first, we have to tell you about Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions or you forgot about that you want to make sure that you weren't paying for twice? Because I know sometimes that I'm really busy or I'm traveling and I say, "Oh, I really want to watch that show," or I'm having a long car ride, I'm a passenger, or I have a chance to download a show while I'm on a flight. I say, "Okay, let me subscribe to this for the free month trial or for a 1 month trial." Go after it. And I totally forget when I get home, when I'm back to that busy schedule at my house and everything like that. And that has happened to me too many times. But Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features in the subscription tracker has to be that I get to cancel service by the goals feature. I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. Once again, that is rocketmoney.com/locked on today. One more time, rocketmoney.com/locked on today. All right. So for the 76ers, really not too much to preview here. They're going to go in shorthanded to this game once again. And I think, Heath, we're going to hold our really looking through the rest of the schedule for later in the week before they get into the brunt of that January schedule. But maybe this is the game, the last game that we see these guys sit out. And then all of a sudden against the Magic, against the Thunder, they start playing these games because they have, it seems like they've sat out really forever when we're talking about Joel Embiid and Paul George. I know Paul George right now isn't officially ruled out at this very moment, but at the same time, I mean, it doesn't look too promising in this game. And there's really not much you can say for this team when those guys don't play in yet another matchup.
Yeah, I do expect Paul to play, though. I do. I mean, I feel like with him being listed as probable, I feel like a lot has to go wrong for him not to play, right? I also feel like, he's a guy who, he knows that the team really needs him. He knows that the team, almost squandered one in the last game. So I feel like he's kind of it, like, I got to go out there and play, right? I do. But when we look at this game, we talked about it before. You got Brandon Ingram out, Herb Jones out, Trey Murphy out, DeJounte Murray is questionable. Now, the one thing is when we look at the game, you say to yourself, like, okay, CJ McCollum's going to play, right? Well, we got DeJounte Murray questionable, Herb Jones out, but Zion Williamson is going to play, right? So when we look at it, you say to yourself, you got CJ Zion, and if DeJounte plays, then it could be tough for the 76ers, just because when we look at it, if they don't have the big fella, Embiid, which they're not going to have Drummond. You just feel like that this could be, and the Pelicans aren't that good, but if CJ McCollum gets cooking like he normally does against the 76ers, and if Zion is just in straight beast mode, it could be a little bit more competitive than the Sixers have really would like for it to be.
Yeah, and if I'm Paul George and I can play in this game, I definitely think that you have to and you got to push through. You clearly don't want him to get injured right now. It's a left groin tightness that he's dealing with, and you don't want him to go out there injured. I totally understand that. Once again, you want to save them for the playoffs. That's been the whole plan this whole season, but they almost really lost to the worst team in the Eastern Conference. That wasn't something that just maybe happened. No, that really almost happened, and it could have been a reality if Yabusele didn't get that big block at the end there as well. So Yabu, I mean, he's going to have tough assignments defensively as well. You look at, once again, you alluded to Joel Embiid out, Andre Drummond out, Kyle Lowry out, KJ Martin out, Jared McCain, we know he is out. Of course, still on that injury report though. But I think if you're Paul George, if you can go, you got to go in this game. And it might not even be to be like, oh, well, I'm going into this game, I'm going to play. It's going to be a big victory and, for this team. But I just think that you need to give that confidence back. We talk about ticket sales starting to dwindle down as well. And you look for the Sixers team right now. If you want to keep the fans engaged, this is at the Wells Fargo Center. If you want to keep them there, you got to put players like Paul George in the game. Once again, people, I don't want anybody to play injured. That's not what I'm saying. But if he can go, why not put him out there? I understand you have a grueling schedule coming up. This team, though, they almost lost to the Washington Wizards, who are out their top scorer, people. We are talking about a 6-win Wizards team as well. So I think if you're Paul George, you got to go, because you're right. This Pelicans team, they can give them some problems. I don't care who they have on the floor, because apparently in the fourth quarter, it can be anybody's game if you're playing the Philadelphia 76ers without Joel Embiid and without Paul George. So PG, he's got to show up in some way, because they're going to be better with him on the floor, even if he's having a shooting slump. I think he needs to be out there, especially you're going to want to utilize him on the defensive side of things too.
Yeah. I fully expect him to play. I mean, I do. And because the thing about the Sixers, a lot of times when they say probable, it's weird. It's like the dude's going to play, but they don't want to have any setbacks. So they'll like say, when you say probable, it's like, oh, it gives you a 15% chance to say, oh, well, we just decided not to play him. But if you say he's going to play and then you come back and you're like, oh, he doesn't play, then all of a sudden it's like, well, where was the setback? What happened? You know what I mean? So I fully expect him to play. I do. I mean, and if
I don't know.
right, if he doesn't play, it's going to look crazy. The fans are going to be upset. I mean, you know what? If he doesn't play, Kayla, you might get a ticket for 50 cents.
Hey, I mean, you're not wrong, though. I mean, they were
42
selling
quarters.
so low. You're not wrong, because the thing here is, and I know, he's probable, and I get that, but the Sixers have done crazier things throughout this season, and I don't have any confidence that he is going to play. Now, you're right. They have an out. That's the thing. They have an
That's
out.
what it
So
is. Yeah.
that's what it is. But seems like this season there's been a lot of setbacks late in the game, and we're going to see if Paul George plays. Now, they have the game here tonight coming up at 7 p.m. And then you go Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday. So you have some good gaps in between that. Yes, you're on the road in Orlando, but then you're back home against the Thunder and the Knicks before you go back on the road against Indiana. So I think this is a perfect game for Paul George to come back. The other thing too, Keith, is PG also hasn't been stellar. So why not come back in a Pelicans game if you can? Maybe try to get your shooting percentage up a little bit more, try to get back in rhythm, because we all know this 76ers team, if it's Joel or Paul George, sometimes when they go back out there, they are a little bit rusty. So I think this is a good game as well to allow Paul George to go out, knock some of that quote unquote rust off. He's a vet. He's not going to have a lot, but maybe to try to get into some momentum, some rhythm here with Tyrese Maxey out there, because Maxey and Gershon Yabusele cannot do this alone. Okay, I know they have other players, but they cannot do this alone, especially Zion, CJ, all of those guys are kind of out for some big time play there at the Wells Fargo Center.
They're going to have to. And I feel like what they're going to have to do is, especially, this game, I think that we're going to have to take the ball a little bit out of Tyrese Maxey's hands and go back to doing what you did against Charlotte and those teams where you ran the offense through PG. That way, at least you get him feeling the ball, touching it, being in a little bit more rhythm. Or, y'all can do certain things where, you give Maxey the ball at times, but so he can get going. But you got to get PG involved big time. You definitely do. No more standing in the corner.
No, they cannot have that. They cannot have that, especially going into the next stretch after the Pelicans. So we'll see if Paul George ends up going out there on the floor. He's probable. Once again, Joel Embiid out of the ball game for the Philadelphia 76ers. Drummond, Lowry out as well. So a few more pieces, and KJ Martin. And then, of course, Jared McCain, he is out with that season-ending injury that has been confirmed too. So we'll wait and see if Paul George comes out and plays some basketball and how they will try to get that going against the Pelicans. Tip-off is tonight at 7 p.m. And, it's going to be an interesting one, because they almost fell to a Wizards team that had 6 wins, people. 6-win Wizards. They were just barely able to get by them. So we'll see if they can kind of turn things around against the Pelicans a little bit, and if Paul George will be out there on the floor. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long. Maybe the 76ers are cursed. We don't know. Maybe it's time to start breaking it. So we will wait and see after the Pelicans game. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in.